someone needs to come kill this guy. It pissed me off. Okay, 400 pages of ugh. Are they gonna live for the rest of eternity like this? What's up, guys? My name is Natalie, and welcome to my Nook of Novels. In today's video, I am going to be telling you guys about every single book that I read in the month of July. Now, I say every single book as if there's like a massive, crazy long list, but there's actually not at all. July was not a crazy good reading month for me. I only managed to complete 5 books in their totality. Well, I say in their totality, but the first one I was already reading at the end of June when I finished it up in July. But I guess without further ado, I'll just go ahead and jump into what those books were. So the first thing I managed to complete in July was Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. And so the reason that this took me so long, did you just see that big stretch? She just big stretched and almost touched the ceiling. The reason that this book took me so long to complete, this took me an entire month to read. And so the reason for that is just because I wasn't that insanely invested in it. Ooh. Gosh, that was scary. So I think a lot of that, I don't want to say boredom because I wouldn't describe this as a boring book, but I would describe my experience reading this throughout a lot of this as boring, just because I was so invested in City of Glass, which was the book that I read just before this. I didn't read that book like directly before this, but the last book in this universe that I read was City of Glass, and I had read it really recently. And I just loved that book. It was so full of action. The character dynamics were really starting to come full circle, and there was just a lot of not necessarily resolution, but like kind of a climactic aspects that were boiling up and like coming into the big picture of things. Does that make sense? I feel like I just spew gibberish. Ignore me. Okay. Anyway, there was like a lot of climactic events that were happening. It was like literally like reading a volcanic eruption. All of this stuff had been like building and building, and all of a sudden like just everything started happening, and it was so fun. It was so immersive. It was so action-packed, and there was just so much happening. Literally all these thematic things, all this love and betrayal and magic, and just everything was like pure, beautiful fantasy story. Like chef's kiss. It was amazing. 4.5 stars. But then I got to this book, and I don't know if it's just because I read this right after City of Glass, and that made it feel very toned down. There was just a lot to live up to, I guess. There were some big shoes to fill after reading that last book, and this just did not. I don't know if it just didn't have any hope of doing that because that book was so good, but it just did not even almost do everything that I was hoping it would. And it's not that I think that this is a bad series, because the end of this book was very amazing, and I am excited to read the second book because I do think that where the story is going to like pick up and be very fun and exciting. But just the point that I was at while I was reading this, I was just not having a great time with it because it felt very slow. Getting into this book was honestly a chore because it's always a little bit hard, I think, to jump into a new fantasy book and have to kind of learn everything and become re-immersed in a new kind of world. I was already familiar with the magic system and somewhat of the setting, of course, but there was definitely a lot of things that were different about this, and I also think it was written more in a way to introduce you to a new fantasy world. And I think the fact that there's different orders that you can read Cassandra Clare books in really factors into that, because I don't know necessarily if this was written specifically to be read after City of Glass, because I know there's different orders that you can read books in, and I don't know for sure if there's one where you can read this series first and this be the introduction to the Shadowhunter world for any readers, but it definitely feels like that's the case. And obviously that's not a bad thing, right? Because that's just how the series works. Like there's different orders to it, so obviously whoever picks this up as their first book needs to understand what's going on. But it just felt like the same exposition that we already experienced 3 books ago, and it just felt like we were backtracking so much by kind of relearning about everything in that way. And I also think it just could have jumped into things faster. I think the fact that there was that exposition and then there was just this crazy slow plot until probably the last 80 pages of this book, because I do remember like once I got to page 400, I was truly having a great time. Things were really picking up and a lot was happening, and I was like, okay, this is the magic, like this is the fantasy story that I remember from the City of Bones books, but this was just 400 pages of ugh. There were so many pages in this book. It was the same probably length as the other City of Glass books, but as I was reading those, I wasn't thinking about how long they were. I was thinking about how fun they were to get through. And this one, I was just really wanting it to end and be over and move through this so that I could move on to better things. And still, as I am sitting here saying that I want to read the second book, I don't even know if that's just because I want to get back to the City of Glass books or the City of Bones, the next Moral Instrument book, whatever that one is. Part of my want to continue with the series is just purely because of that. But again, like, I do have high hopes still, because obviously Cassandra Clare is very talented with the things that she did in the other series. So I'm not completely just throwing this out the window and saying that I think the series is going to be terrible, but I just did not have a very fun time with this one. But again, the ending was really, really good. So I gave this one 3 stars because the ending really pulled through and it was okay. I saw the vision, but it really fell flat for me. So those are my thoughts on this one. The things that I wrote, I said main character's powers were cool. Plot was very slow. Picked up at the end. I liked the love interest. And that is true. The romance was good. However, there was barely any romance in this book. It was very much like hinting at like, ooh, she really likes this guy. And that was literally all. I think they kissed one time and then it was like immediately after that, they just were like, no, never mind. Like, we're just not gonna do this. And so that was really annoying because it was very obvious that she liked him. But anyway, that's beside the point. And the main character, she did have some fun abilities, but I just think the way that they were like, introduced, it made me care less because of how slow everything felt. But anyway, on to the next book that I finished in July. And that is Christmas in Camelot by Mary Pope Osborne, the 29th book in the Magic Treehouse series. I read this one during the 24-hour readathon that I did in the month of July, and this one was really fun. It definitely had some different vibes to all of the previous Magic Treehouse books because this one is more like fairy tale kind of vibes, because obviously like a lot of the books in the series are focused on real historical events like the Titanic or Pompeii, or those are the only ones that I can think of. But I don't know if it's just because like this is a Merlin mission book and I don't know if those ones specifically go into fantasy settings or if I just like made that up in my brain and assumed just because this one was a little bit different. But I definitely liked that. I liked the fairy tale kind of element of it and how it brought those elements of this very well-known story into this plot of this story really well. There was one part specifically that I thought was really fun, and it was the scene where they portrayed the kind of event. I don't really know if this is in the Camelot like original fairy tale stories or if this is like a historical thing. I think my roommate told me that this was like a real thing that happened, or like allegedly, if you will, where people started uncontrollably dancing until they died. And so they had like that as like a scene in this book as well, which I thought that was so fun. I love like seeing that story. I don't know where it comes from though, is the thing. So I might have to do some research into the historical / fairy tale kind of origins of that because I think it's so fun. I always love how it's done every time I see that in any piece of media. I want to say they do that in the Barbie like 12 Dancing Princesses movie or something like that. It's either from that or the book House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig, maybe? I don't remember. But there's some like 12 Dancing Princesses retelling that I'm thinking of in my brain where they dance until they die. But something is really fascinating about that. I think it's really cool. And I don't know where it comes from, but I like that it was incorporated into the story. Things I wrote, I said, I like the change of scenery into the fantasy setting. Fairy tale vibes were nice. I really enjoyed the tale about the endless dancing. The next 3 books that I read in July were all Colleen Hoover books. If you guys want to see more of my thoughts on these and like my experience as I was actively reading these books, then go check out my Colleen Hoover vlog. I will have that linked in the description of this video. But I basically just spent an entire week reading only Colleen Hoover. These next 3 books are everything that I managed to read within that week. So the first one is It Ends With Us by, you guessed it, Colleen Hoover. I give this one 4 stars, and so I really enjoyed this. I listened to the audiobook of it. Her books I always find very fascinating and hard to put down because I think she does a great job of creating a captivating plot, and she always does a kind of dual timeline thing where you can see some sort of the character's past or history that it flashes back to. So there's always like a present, either romance or just general like, plot thing happening in the present tense, and so every not necessarily every other chapter, but there will be chapters going back into the past, so it kind of builds this very like mysterious aspect as the story goes on that makes you just wonder what happened in the past. And it's not always a second chance romance kind of vibe. It kind of was that in It Ends With Us, but in like a love triangle way. It definitely did not feel like a stereotypical love triangle, because it kind of came out of nowhere, to be honest. Like the love triangle element, if that makes sense. I was not expecting it to really feel like that. In previous Colleen Hoover books that I've read, it's not the same. She doesn't do it the same in every single book. Like you really wonder what's gonna happen between the past things that happened and the present. That probably was confusing, but I don't want to spoil anything, because some of the things that I said in the Colleen Hoover vlog, if you guys have seen that and kind of know some feelings that I have about certain characters, I don't want to spoil the ending of the book for anybody. So I'm gonna leave it at that. But that aspect of this I think was done very well in terms of keeping me on the edge of my seat and making me wonder what was gonna happen there, as well as just in the main character's personal life. She had a lot of experiences in her childhood and like when she was a teenager that it was really interesting. Like it was very, how do I put this? It was a very like plot heavy romance. I don't know if that's how I put it, because I wouldn't really say that any romance book is plot heavy if you think about it in comparison with like a fantasy book or something, right? If I'm holding up City of Glass and It Ends With Us, obviously there's like a huge difference when I say plot heavy there. But for a romance book, there was a lot of personal situations and feelings, and it had a lot to do with her personal life. Not just the main characters, but the side characters as well. There were a lot of like heavy themes expressed throughout the entirety of this book that were explored from different perspectives and in different ways, and it really went very in-depth into the feelings of not necessarily every single character, but particularly the main character, how she might feel different ways about a certain situation that it might seem like to the reader it's very clear, it's very obvious kind of what is going on, but you can understand why she might not feel the same way, or why she might be very conflicted or confused about her general circumstances. But I thought it was done very well. It really kept my attention. Sometimes when I get in the car, I just really want to listen to music instead of an audiobook because it's easier for my brain to process, but every single time I hopped in my car, I was turning on Audible as soon as I could, just wanting to know what was going to happen next. So that's definitely something that I feel like is a theme across all of Colleen Hoover's books that I've read. I've read 5 of them total now, and every single time I'm hooked, I'm invested, and I just want to know where things are going to go next. The next thing I read was It Starts With Us, which I also listened to the audiobook for, and this was a similar story but in a more toned down sort of way. This felt definitely more lighthearted. There weren't as many heavy themes. It was kind of just a fluffy continuation of where the first book ended off, but in a less romantic kind of way. It kind of just felt like a slice of life almost. Like it was very much a romance book at heart. The same with It Ends With Us, but I just don't think that it didn't really do the things I think that a romance book necessarily does in order to make you super invested in the romance. Like there were definitely parts of this where I was like, okay, I don't remember really why I was rooting for these characters in the first place. Not necessarily because there was anything bad happening between the characters, but mostly just because it was kind of boring. Like not the book itself, because again, like she does the thing that makes me want to keep reading, but it was just the fact that there weren't any major cute scenes between these characters that really made me feel like they were to die for. Like they just had this crazy, beautiful romance that was stunning. Obviously, I remembered it from the first book and the things that happened there, but there just weren't any crazy moments. Like there were details that were important. This dude like drove all the way over to her apartment like just to give her a hug like once or twice, and then he would leave her these cute notes all the time, and like that was cute. But there wasn't this beautiful day that these characters spent together where they went on a picnic or they did something fun, they had a day off that they spent together. There was nothing like that. There was one date scene where she was literally asleep for like 2 hours of it. There was nothing where you could really see these characters like connecting for an extended period of time, and I feel like that made the book really lacking. I feel like it could have used a lot more, something like sparkly, something magical in there just to make it like have that extra leg to be really good, and I just don't think it was. I still gave it 4 stars because again, it was enjoyable and I was like wanting more of the story just with how things ended in the first book, and I do think it gave that to me. I feel like it is almost exactly what it was made for. Like, there's a note in the beginning of the book that literally says that Colleen Hoover was never intending to make a sequel, but she did just because people were like wanting more of the relationship between the characters. And so that's definitely the vibes that the book gives off. It's just kind of like, here's a little bit more of this, but I just think it could have been more fully fleshed out. But again, like, I did eat it up just because I was really invested already, and like I did want to know what was happening and everything like that. So thumbs up for me, but it could have been a very wonderful like thumbs up and a smiley face, you know what I mean? But it was kind of just like, okay, that was good. You know what I mean? So I gave it 4 stars. Honestly, it might even be more of a 3.5 in hindsight, but it was good. It was enjoyable. Also, one more thing that I will mention is the fact that I saw something on a YouTube short the other day where someone had mentioned that they didn't think that It Ends With Us is a romance book because of the heavy themes that were in it, which I thought was really interesting. And I know that there's been a lot of argument about Emily Henry. I don't remember which book it is. I want to say it's like Happy Place or something. I don't know, like one of her more recent books, I guess, had like heavier non-romance major topics in it, and people were saying that wasn't a romance book, but I totally disagree. It just does not give the vibes of literary fiction at all, because it's not a slice of life kind of slow story where you're just watching this person experience the world, and I feel like that is very much like the vibes of literary fiction, whereas It Ends With Us is again like, ooh, plot and romance, and now they're kissing, and now she's thinking about how she went through terrible things when she was a child. But now I just think that the way the story is told and the fact that it is very romance based and 50% of what drives the story is the romance, it is a romance book. In my opinion, I would 100% say that those are romance books. And like, yes, there's heavier themes in it that are major topics, and I do like that. Like, I love when a book has bigger things going on in them, and that makes them so much more like emotional and impactful, and I think it makes for a much better reading experience. So I definitely enjoy having elements like that in the story, and it makes it just really, again, enjoyable and keeps me on the edge of my seat. But I would 100% call it a romance book just because of how different it feels in my brain from every single literary fiction that I've read, which honestly isn't a ton, but I love literary fiction as a genre, but I just haven't read very much of it, I wouldn't say. But it's definitely one that I really want to get more into because I just enjoy it so much. The main one I would say that I would think of that I've read is A Little Life, but also Notes on an Execution. I gave those both 5 stars. Those were both so good. But anyway, we're getting off topic now. But back to my July reading. The next book, this was my favorite book of July that I read, and it was Layla by Colleen Hoover. The more I think about this book, the higher I want to rate it. Because originally I gave it 4.5 stars, but when I think about it, honestly, I kind of enjoyed this book more than I enjoyed Verity by Colleen Hoover. But I don't know if I'm just saying that because I'm excited about it, because I feel like in the moment when I was reading Verity, I was obsessed. Like, I loved Verity, and I gave that book 5 stars. And as I was reading Layla, I was like, yeah, this is so good. Like, this is really interesting. And then the ending, like, really blew my socks off, like, away, like, other side of the just thinking about this book makes me so happy. It makes me smile. I feel like it's something that's gonna stick with me. But then I don't know if that makes it 5-star worthy because it didn't really give the 5-star vibe kind of thing. I guess just because the main character pissed me off throughout most of the book. And it was just really hard to enjoy myself as I was reading it just because of how annoying it was. Like, it was making me actually angry. Like, I was like, what is this man doing? Like, someone needs to come kill this guy. Like, it was awful. I was not having a good time. But at the same time, like, it was great. I don't even know how to explain it. It doesn't make any sense, but it does in my head. So I think I'm gonna stick with my 4.5-star rating just because from the experience I had reading the book, I feel like 4.5 stars fits it the best. But also, like, I do think I like Layla more than Verity, especially in like an unbiased overview kind of philosophical, that's not even the word, I can't think of the word, like a critical standpoint. I definitely think that Layla is a lot better than Verity, but I guess Verity had more of like the constant shock factor kind of thing, whereas Layla was more of, not a slow burn, that's not even the word, it was very fast and thrilling, but it's kind of along the vibes of when you're watching a horror movie. And I took a horror film class during my freshman year, and I don't remember what it's called, but there's like a specific word for when films do a very specific thing where they have all these long slow shots. I'm sounding nerdy at this point, bear with me. I promise this loops back around to the point that I'm getting to, and it won't take very long. So So there are all these low, long shots. These long, slow shots where it's just like, boom, boom, boom. Those are some of my favorite horror movies because they're usually more psychological or like, I don't know, they just build the story in a way. It's a horror movie in a more way that makes you think, and it's like scary because of the things that it's making you think instead of the fact that it's like, scary chase scene, jump scare. Like, it's not that kind of thing. It's like very different of a vibe. And that's how I feel like the difference is between Layla and Verity, because Verity was very fast paced, like, ooh, it's really dark and scary and there's someone upstairs and you can hear sounds and you're really afraid and it makes you want to like look around and make sure there's no one in the room with you while you're reading it. But then Layla was very like, what is going on in this dude's head? Something is messing with him. He's just doing all these crazy things. And like, it was very, again, fast and thrilling, but in like a slower paced kind of way. And I don't even know if that makes any sense at all, but that's the best way that I can describe the experience of reading Layla. But I thought it was so good. I thought it was amazing. And I really, really enjoyed it very much. And the ending was crazy in like a very good way. Best thriller ending I think I've ever read. Actually, I don't read a lot of thrillers, so it's not saying a ton, but again, like, it was very amazing and good. And I've read a decent number of thrillers, so yeah, I love that one. So the notes that I wrote about it were so interesting, spooky, emotional, hated main character, loved the ending. This really made my brain work. So fast paced, flew through this. And I feel like that is a very good summary of everything that I felt about this book. Okay, so that was everything that I read in its entirety, or at least like finished during the month of July, but I also started a couple other books. So my main current read at the moment is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, and I made it to page 209 of this book. I still have 2 more days of the month. I have tonight and then tomorrow, and then after that is the first. I'm really enjoying this so far. It's very slow paced and almost like a literary fiction. I don't really know what genre you even call this. Obviously like paranormal, but I don't really know aside from that. You're kind of just watching these people live. That sounds so boring, but it's so good. Like, in the way the literary fiction is so hooks you in kind of thing, and just you have to know what these people are gonna do, even though it's like very almost mundane, like everyday things. But I don't know, it's exciting. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like I'm not selling this book at all, but it's so good. Like, the way that it's written is so beautiful and stunning, and you just really understand these characters in a very like twisted kind of way, and you're like, wow. You almost don't like the main characters, but not in like an irredeemable kind of way. It's just kind of like, are they gonna live for the rest of eternity like this? You're kind of like looking down upon them, like, what in the world are you doing, kind of thing. It's really good. It's really interesting, and I'm honestly having a blast with this. So this is my main current read. And then I also read more of Unravel Me by Sahara Mafi during the month of July, but we've just not really had a chance to like sit down and read a lot of this because I'm reading this to my boyfriend, but we just haven't had a ton of reading time, so we're moving through this one slowly but surely. I'm on page 155. And then we also read the first half of Saga Volume 9 by Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan, so this is another one that I read a teeny tiny bit of. And in the next couple days, I'm going to be starting Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I'm reading this for a book club, and I cannot express to you guys how excited I am to read this book. I just have so much enthusiasm for the things that I expect this book to make me feel, and I cannot wait. I just feel like I'm not ready for my experience, and I am thrilled. So that is something else for you guys to look forward to. But yeah, that is everything that I read during the month of July. Everything that I finished, everything I started, and yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed, then please hit the like button and subscribe if you would like to, and hit the notification bell if you would like to see the other videos that I post only on Thursdays now, with reading sprints on every first and third Monday of the month, not replacing that Monday video because I'm not posting on Mondays anymore. My Bookstagram, my Goodreads, and my book talk will all be linked in the description of this video if you guys would like to check out any of those, as well as my Colleen Hoover vlog like I mentioned earlier, and also my August Wheel of TBR if you guys are interested in seeing the books that Spinning My Wheel chose for me to read in the month of August. And I'll probably have another recent video or 2 linked down there as well if you guys are interested in seeing any of that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!